All right. Hello.
Woo!
This
Yay.
used to be my neighborhood theater. I sat in J16 right there with a nice little footrest. So this
And
is
reserve
fun.
seat.
And I think it's
Wow.
appropriate too to talk about how gaming and esports has grown in the mainstream consciousness, but also, when we talk about just the idea of lifestyle that we're sitting in the mecca of entertainment in a lot of people's eyes in Hollywood, and we're in a movie theater that a lot of times people associate with general market types of entertainment, and we're all people that come from the esports ecosystem, and we're going to talk about what lifestyle means to us. But we do have a clip. It's about a minute long, and it'll introduce Doa and Emuhleet in a little bit of their world if you're unfamiliar. So if you guys want to play that clip, and then we'll use that to set up the context for our conversation.
Look though, and this EQO Dragon Strike goes right through the wall.
It's like London are punished for playing so far forward there. EQO just turns around and nukes them in the face.
Not able to do so. Carpe also comes on the flank. Nice headshot there. Back Burberry.
I mean, he's supposed to be a sniper, but he was more than happy to take it close quarters there.
And Sato, using the Primal Rage, was able to get both support heroes for the London Spitfire. No healing. Eventually, his team, with both support heroes alive, is going to win that fight.
Throwing smoke. Throwing fire. Throwing smoke.
3, 2, 1.
Throwing grenade.
One back round. Back round.
Team Dignitas!
To me, the idea of what gaming lifestyle, and I get this question a lot, and so my name is Nate Eckman. I have a company called Ultimate Media Ventures and a brand called Ult, which is really a case study around how do we communicate the idea of modern fashion and creating products that are specific to a gaming consumer. So let's just, before I really start talking a lot about lifestyle, let's do quick little intros on each of you, and then I'll talk about like why I really value each of your opinions so much in this area.
Right, I'm Erik Lonnquist. I go by Doe Online. I've been an esports caster since 2010, about 8 years, I guess, now. And I lived in Korea for 6 years, kind of built my career out there, and then last year moved back to LA to work with Blizzard Entertainment on the Overwatch League.
Hi everyone, my name is Emmalee Garrido. My gamer name is Emuhleet. In the morning I work part-time as a nurse, and nighttime I'm a professional gamer. I'm the captain of an all-female CSGO team, Team Dignitas, who's also owned by the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm a streamer, a 4-time world champion, and my team is currently ranked the best female team in the world right now.
That is amazing. I love that.
Hey, I'm Julian, Cantwell. I also go by SSPACE online with 2 S's, not to be confused with the Overwatch player. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for the San Francisco Shock and the Overwatch League, and NRG Esports as a whole, as a conglomerate. I do a lot of cultural content production and brand marketing for our players and our brands across our multiple teams. And I've been working in esports since I was a kid in high school.
So we have an incredible, paradox in culture where people think, oh, entertainment, video games, what does this all mean? Who are these people? And when I think about lifestyle, and I'm really curious about each of your perceptions on this word, is, what we saw on the screen is how most people associate what their knowledge of video games is. It's people sitting down, they're logged in, they're online, they're playing with other people from maybe all around the world. But the notion of lifestyle to me has always been, who are you as an individual outside of the game? What comprises the choices that you make, the things that you're really passionate about, the things that really connect all of us, whether that's, you love of music, of art, of streetwear, of food, fashion, like all of these things that really touch on what are your core passions as an individual and the things that drive you to action. So, for me, if I take like I love making content. We talked about that. There's that vertical. There's art. There's design. There's all these other types of things, and those are really what build the relationships and build the community and really let that community thrive. Is sharing passion. And yes, the one really common unifier is video games and our love of competitive video games. But let's start with you, Erik, and just talk a little bit about like what is the role of gaming lifestyle played in your life? What does it mean to you? And then I want to hear a little bit about that from each of you.
I think for me, gaming lifestyle has always been a lot about community, which is, I know, part of the name of this panel, but it really does apply because over time in esports, I've met so many different people from so many different walks of life. I mean, just within my esports sphere of casters I've worked with, other commentators I've worked with, we've had like me, who is an art major. I have a degree in studio art. I've got a friend who's got an English degree who did theater. I've got a friend who was an aerospace engineer, a child psychologist. Like, you've got so many people from so many different places, but like you said, that unifying thing is gaming and being able to connect all of those people from so many different economic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, under the same thing, the same sort of umbrella of competitive gaming is, I think, really the value that has, and that's what I've been able to be fortunate enough to experience a lot of, is that it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. You can enjoy trying to beat your friend in a video game, and that brings you together.
How about you, Emily? I know you're obviously, like you said, a 4-time world champion. That's amazing. You're on an all-female team. There's things about you that many people know. You tell them about some of the other things. Like you said, you're a nurse as well. Talk about some of the creative passions that you have, in and around the other, people on your team that you guys can share together. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've been gaming for over 15 years, playing the same game, Counter-Strike, that I'm a pro in now. And I would say my lifestyle is always evolving and changing, and I think social media has a huge impact on that. And like when I first started playing, I never thought I would travel to different countries. Like, I've been to Macau, Portugal, France, Poland, all to compete in a tournament with my team. And when I first started gaming, I was always frightened to tell people that I was a gamer. I called myself a closet gamer. I never told anyone. My best friend didn't know until like 5 years ago. So for me, my esports lifestyle is always changing. And before, I would look forward to going to my local LAN center to play with my hidden gaming friends, I guess. And now I'm even connecting with my parents. They're asking me, how did your practice go today? What country are you visiting next month? And it's just so ever evolving thing for me, my lifestyle. And my teammates were the bridesmaids in my wedding, and my coach is my husband, and just I'm connecting with my fans through Twitch, and this is just an evolving and growing lifestyle for me.
Love that idea of evolution. We'll talk more about that after we hear from Julian.
Yeah, I think one of the points that you brought up earlier, sort of about how esports is global and it's cross-cultural. For me, that's really important. The lifestyle of esports for me is that it really is without borders. You're getting events and players from across the world, right? From China, from Seoul, from the United States, and they're competing in so many different events, so many different franchise leagues. But what's unique about like franchise leagues in esports versus the NFL and the NBA is you don't really get a lot of cross-cultural marketing from the NFL and the NBA. Like they have a global presence, but they're really focused on the United States market, I would say. You only really get a lot of that cross-cultural marketing from things like the World Cup. But for me, when I look at, say, players in the Shock, I have Korean players, I have European players, I have American players. My goal is, how do I create pieces of content, or how do I create a marketing plan, or how do I tell stories that reach fans in China, that reach fans in Korea, that reach fans in our local market? Because esports really is just an absolute cultural exchange of ideas, from the fashion, from Korean fashion, from Chinese fashion, to SoCal fashion. You see that not only in fashion, but just in how players exchange and how how people like us exchange. And I think that's probably the most important thing to me in terms of what lifestyle is that exchange of culture. And you see it in every single league and every single piece of content, at least that I try to create.
Let's talk. We'll talk more about globalization in a minute because that's obviously super important. But let's talk about the evolution. You talked about the evolution of your lifestyle. I mean, I really enjoy how esports and competitive video games challenges a lot of archetypes and challenges a lot of institutional thinking, and we kind of live as a part of a generation that's on the front end of that. Getting to watch Erik, casting an event that's challenging how traditional mainstream media broadcasts entertainment to the world and what that even means. Let's talk a little bit about the definitions of words and how those have evolved. Like this notion of sport has evolved. That came up earlier when my colleague Chris was talking with Ramon at Tencent about how Nike has a perception that an athlete sweats and an athlete moves fast and has big muscles and is very masculine. And I think even on this panel we've kind of disrupted that idea, and we live in a culture and we embody the lifestyle that challenges those notions. How does that affect your kind of daily interactions with people that you interact with in your lifestyle, as far as we're participating in a change of definition of sport and athleticism?
I think there's always a question, right, that people want to ask. Well, is esports a sport? And my answer to that has always been, who cares, right? It's entertainment at the end of the day. What's football? It's entertainment, right? So perhaps the dictionary definition of sport needs to change, because if you look it up in the dictionary, it's a athletic competition, and a lot of esports wouldn't quite fit that dictionary definition, but I don't think they need to. I don't even think that's an argument that's worth participating in, right? Because the fact is that people love competition, and they like watching other people do what they do at the highest degree, and that's really where the value comes from. So along with this, I think it is very important for people in the video game industry to promote what I call healthy gaming, which is, we're not suggesting that kids go out there and play video games for 16 hours a day. That's obviously not healthy, right? We're promoting a sense of gaming that says, enjoy the game, play, practice hard, do as well as you can, but along with that, pay attention to your physical fitness, pay attention to your nutrition, and a lot of professional teams do that, right? And I think that's very important going forward, that even if esports doesn't embody those traditional physical aspects of sports, we still make sure that we as a community make sure we're advocating for a healthy lifestyle that goes along with gaming and is more well-rounded. And you talked a little bit about the culture around esports and all that kind of stuff, and I think everyone I know who's big into esports has a lot of other big facets to their lives too. Like I love climbing and I love hiking, and I would go insane without those things too. So I think it's a rambling answer that's kind of more or less what you're looking for. I don't know.
Well, no, I know I want to go hiking and climbing with you at some point.
Please do. Yeah, let's do it.
Emmuhleet, I'm as a team leader yourself of an all-women's Counter-Strike team, 4-time world champion, you guys are really challenging some of these notions of what does it mean to be athletic or to embody the spirit of sport. And while I totally agree with Erik in the sense of I don't really care if I'm living up to a definition of what someone's cultural archetype of sport means, I think if you don't mind talking a little bit about how you embody the essence of sport when you go to compete with your fellow teammates. And one of my favorite quotes I've ever heard from you is, we're not here to look pretty, we're here to win, and we don't care that we're female, we're here to win, we want to be the best. So I think the spirit of sport and athleticism is really through and through in competitive games. Talk a little bit about what that means to you and how you can convey that to your fellow teammates.
I definitely care when people say that I'm not an athlete, because I am an athlete. I train just as hard, if not harder, than traditional sports athletes with my team. My team's lucky because we got to do training at the Philadelphia 76ers training complex, and I'm learning, like, with the evolving community in esports and how we're growing. There's so many more careers in esports now other than being a caster or a gamer. There's sports psychologists, there's physiotherapists, and that's all the training that we got at the 76ers complex. So we were treated like athletes there, not gamers. And every problem that an NBA athlete had was relatable to us. And it really validated esports for me in that I'm not just a gamer, I'm an athlete. And I think my Canadian players on my team were one of the first to get professional athlete visas to come to America. So they're not looked in the world as gamers that way. So it's a never fight because it is an argument between people who don't really understand esports quite yet, but it's definitely validated from NBA teams and NFL teams investing into esports, I think. And my team plays a huge role in this and being role models for not just any gamers but also female gamers to look up, because it is a male dominated scene of it doesn't matter who you are, what you look like. If you work hard enough, you can be a professional at that, and it's just everyday work, but I see growth in it.
Really cool. Hey, Julian, you want to talk about the evolution of sport? I mean, you guys are part of a leading team org, playing in all the tier 1 kind of sport, but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for me, I think the conversation that a lot of people don't have that I kind of focus on is not necessarily what is the literal definition of an athlete from an athletic or performance perspective, although I do fall into the tree that I think esports athletes are athletes. For me, it's what is culturally a professional athlete? What is the cultural impact that a professional athlete has? Someone like Tom Brady, he has troves of kids that want to be him. He's giving back to not only his local market community, but the United States and globally as a whole. People want to aspire to be him. You can see that in esports too. If you go to Shanghai, you can see there are cafes named after an RNG player. His name is Uzi. And you can talk to kids and people in Shanghai, like, I want to be Uzi. And they have Uzi jerseys. They're all about him. He has a real cultural impact on Chinese esports and Chinese culture. The same with someone like Faker in Korea. And then even in the Overwatch League, in our local market in San Francisco, kids love Sinatra, they love Super, they love Architect. So when I look at what is a professional athlete, it's not about athleticism, it's about how do you affect the culture around you, how are you affecting the kids that look up to you, the market around you. I'm seeing Faker in railway billboards, the same as I see Patrick Mahomes, like a Kansas City Chiefs player in Kansas City. They have, in esports, we're getting to the point, particularly in Asia, where that cultural impact as professional athletes is at the same level as international superstars in other sports. And kids look up to these players and these athletes and as role models. And it's even getting that point in the West, I think, too, especially with the Overwatch League and even in other franchise leagues like the LCS in terms of the superstars that they have. So that's really what I look at it. That's my perspective. And I think it's a question that people are getting too harped up on definitions of what is a performance athlete. I think you really need to look at a bigger picture.
Yeah, I think if you speak to younger and younger fans of gaming, they don't ask those questions. They just feel as though the ubiquity of gaming is normal to them. The celebrities that they aspire to be like are often streaming personalities or people that they see competing or in and around the world of video games, which they love so much. I think the idea of cultural integration is really very top down. It's at every point of my daily life that the passion for games touches business. It touches how we form our partnerships with other leagues and teams and personalities, and the choices that we make are really a reflection of our values. So I think the idea of really a deep integration across the entirety of our lifestyle is really how we become aware of how important lifestyle is in the world of games. I think that one of the bigger differences, perhaps, from traditional sport ideas is within games, the accessibility to compete and play and share is really all-inclusive. Like, whether you live in any part of the world or you're any type of gender or race or socioeconomic background, like the ability to have access to participate in and potentially thrive is quite often overlooked comparative to what it takes to participate in a stick and ball sport. But I think that one of the really big lessons I've been learning a lot about recently is mostly around being radically inclusive. And as our emerging market of competitive games is really starting to thrive more and more in traditional consciousness, I think for us as leadership and as emerging leadership, it's important that we embrace this idea of what it means to be radically inclusive, whether that's with how you choose to interact with your fans or your community or your fellow colleagues. Can each of you talk a little bit about the impact of inclusivity specific to gaming and how important that has been to you?
I think that's one of the great things about video games in general is that, like we touched on earlier, it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. You can always pick up that controller or pick up that mouse and keyboard and play against someone and have a good time and beat them or not beat them. Anyone can do that. I grew up in a household where I was the oldest of 8 kids, so there's a lot of people, and there was 4 guys, 4 girls. And for us, like video games weren't a gender thing. Like my parents didn't say, oh, that's for guys, the girls can play with dolls or something. Like we all play video games together, and that was encouraged. And I think that's one of the great things about gaming is that there's no limitations there too. So I was fortunate to kind of grow up in that situation where there was no set stigmas or associations with who can play video games and who can't. And that attitude, I think, is something that's starting to become more common, right? It's not as common as it should be right now. I'm sure you can speak to the difficulties of that kind of thing. But I think over time, that's something that the community is already starting to overcome, and I think it's going to get better.
I think one of my favorite things to challenge is the idea of stigma. And some of at every point, like if I have 1,000 choices I could make a day, if there's opportunities to challenge and disrupt traditional stigma and to sustain that through the course of our life, I feel like that's the positive impact. And whether or not like people understand where is competitive games, what does this all mean, what is esports, what is this industry, I think it's a collection of really passionate young people who are hyper connected and they're capable and willing of being vocal and standing up for the things that they're passionate about, and really that's their lifestyle, that's their choices.
Right. Something I've been thinking about a lot lately too is in terms of esports in a school setting, right, in high school or colleges, people are starting to realize that this is a way to bring some kids out that wouldn't normally participate in school functions and get them out into the community, integrated with the rest of the student body. And you can deal with a lot of issues that some kids have in school as far as feeling isolated, feeling like they're not part of anything. Esports is really a great tool for these institutions to bring those kids out of their shells and kind of get them more involved. That's something important to think about too, I think.
Emmalee, what does inclusiveness mean to you? I mean, I think of you as an advocate. I admire your skill to be a champion in your game of choice. But more than that, I value and admire, you as, you embody what other aspirational youth can look up to. Like, I can do anything. I can become anything. Like, that's pretty incredible. What does that idea mean to you to be inclusive?
Well, a little bit of a background of why I worked so hard is when I first started gaming, I put a lot of time into it. I played soccer, volleyball, I did dance, I did all the traditional sporty things to do, but it wasn't for me. And that's why I quit gaming, was to go to nursing school to make my parents happy. They didn't see a career in esports back then. So once I got my nursing degree, I came back to gaming, and my parents were like, why do you have that? You have your nursing license, go find a nursing job. And I wanted to prove to them that I can do a traditional job working in a hospital, and I can follow my passion of being a professional gamer. So for me, I think a lot of people could relate to me, and especially being a female gamer too, is I was one of the only female gamers at these local tournaments playing against guys, and I knew that I was a good player, and so I wanted to make an all-female team pretty much just to make a statement that it doesn't matter what we are, is that we can compete against anybody, guys, girls, whoever wants to be against us, I guess. So for me, I guess exclusively people don't know the hard work that goes behind that. It's struggling with people that are trying to put you down, but that's with anything in real life. Someone that wants to be better than you will try to say that you're not good at something. But me, I turned it around and I just practiced harder. I was practicing maybe 7 to 10 hours a day on my own time. And then I had practice with my team. And I was working a full-time job as a nurse. So there's a lot of hard work behind that people don't know that goes into being a professional gamer.
Julian, you want to talk about inclusivity and how important that is for your org?
Yeah. So I think what's really remarkable about esports is just how streamlined opportunity is for everyone. Because whether you're an athlete, whether you're, going into business, whether you're a player manager, whether you're a caster, whatever, there's so many different avenues for success in esports and gaming. And the barrier isn't identity, the barrier isn't race, the barrier isn't gender, it's hard work, it's talent, it's your ability to shine. And I think esports really, really embodies that. And I think what's even more remarkable is how the community and the industry around that is continually trying to proliferate that in a higher measure. Because we're kidding ourselves if we ever think that there isn't issues that need to be tackled every day in esports that do mirror issues in sports. An issue that I faced 2 years ago when I was working as a collegiate organizer and a director of a program was we were faced with the question of whether or not we wanted the NCAA to come into collegiate esports. And as a conglomerate, as directors, we were saying no, because the NCAA puts up barriers that you don't see in traditional or in esports, right? You have all men football, you have all women's soccer, you have barriers in Title I sports that would sort of come into esports, and that was our worry when I was working in collegiate. And the community in collegiate esports really got around the idea, like, if there is any working with the NCAA, it has to be in the cultural guidelines that we've set, or we're going to push back. And there was a ton of pushback. There's still an ongoing research partnership with the NCAA of whether or not we want to get involved. And I think that just goes to show in all levels that the community and the industry really, really is focused on sort of cultural inclusivity and cultural diversity. And they're going to push back against anyone that tries to sort of rewrite what we're creating. And moreover, I think the most important thing to take away is that we still do face even internal barriers. One of the biggest storylines in the Overwatch League this year was Gaguri and how she was, the first professional esports athlete in a franchise league. That is something we will continue to see the rise of, and I think we can do even a better job to get rid of the smaller barriers that we already have to continue to create stories like that. So it's a lot of continued retrospection and introspection still.
I like to think about team composition in our studio, in our office, and how we put staffing teams together to work on any type of business project. Like, diversity in our thinking just makes it more interesting, yields a better outcome, and I can't wait to have mixed gender teams like in all the tier 1 leagues. I think that's going to be awesome. Let's talk about globalization, because unlike traditional sports, I feel like we really live in a time when whether Emilee's team is traveling literally every end of the world to compete, or Doa, you're casting an event that goes to many different diverse parts of the world, and is has fans and franchise spots on every corner of the planet. The industry of gaming has really challenged us to think about how do we globally participate, how do we, and on our side as entrepreneurs, like, how do we build businesses and partnerships that are capable of scaling globally is definitely top of mind. So let's talk a little bit about like how significant a role, or how just the mindfulness of thinking globally plays a role in the types of choices that you make in esports.
I think it's all about the community aspect again, right? You could have someone who didn't feel like they fit in with any community where they are, but yet online they have this esports community that they can enjoy with other people from places they may never even have heard of, right? So they can jump online and watch a match on Twitch and chat with people that are from all sorts of different countries and find that community that they might be lacking at home. So globally, I think that's ultra important, right? And you kind of also create these sort of threads of goodwill between nations too that may otherwise not exist if there's some sort of political rivalry between nations. You know, if you have people meeting and enjoying these games together, that starts to sort of soften that a little bit. You would help. And I'm not saying that esports is going to change the world or something like that. You know, I believe it can, but I do believe that's probably overstating things a little bit too. And we're talking about video game competition, but I really do believe, you know, that we are making these connections in a global community and creating a place of belonging and a sense of belonging for a lot of people that need it, you know, whether they are sort of the very shy, introverted gamers or they are the very extroverted, you know, exuberant personalities as well from all different sort of places. So I don't want to get too philosophical here, right? But I do believe that there is a lot of value in terms of how esports specifically connects people in online communities at a global scale that really doesn't exist in other realms of entertainment right now.
Yeah, Emmalee, you know, you've been vocal in the past about, you know, you have travel anxiety sometimes, which is fascinating to think that you go up in front of people and you talk about yourself, you talk about your aspirations and your dreams, and you know, you go and compete on stages. Talk a little bit about, like, you've got fans literally all around the world. You know, the choices that you make, the decisions of what you choose to share from social media or whatever. It's like, it's a reflection of you as a person, as an individual, but as a part of an organization and a team that is really has a global impact. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I love the power of being online and the internet. I think it really connects the world as a whole. For me, I love being on Twitch, and I have a connection with my fans through Twitch chat. I get to talk to them individually. People come to me for advice, whether it be real life advice or gaming advice. And Twitter, I get to connect with people through comments, and YouTube, I make vlogs so people can see what goes on behind the scenes with my team. And it's just a really good way for me to connect with people who aren't always around me. I'm always busy, so I get to talk to people from all different countries all around the world because of the power of the internet and social media. And when I get to travel to events where my fans are, they come up to me and take pictures, and I love seeing the smile on their face if we have something to give them, something small like a team bracelet or a team hat or shirt. And it's just something that is just growing, and my fan base is growing because I have this connection with them on a personal level. They're not just people who support me, they're people who I let them know that they matter too, and that's building my brand and my organization's brand as a whole. The bigger I get, the more popular my organization gets, and it's just ever growing, and it's really good for everyone in the community, I think. And yeah, going back to what you were saying about in high school, there's starting to be esports teams there and college teams there, and I go to college summer camps sometimes, and there's a girls' summer gaming camp at UCI that I go to every summer. I love it because the girls here are 8 to 17 years old, and they tell me that they want to be just like me, a professional gamer, and I just something that would never happen 5 years ago because, like I told you before, I used to have really bad anxiety. It was difficult for me to go out, not out of the house, but I guess talk to people, let alone sitting here now. I just never thought I could be doing something like that, but that's the power of the internet and gaming and esports. It broke me out of my shell and allowed me to connect with people who had the same passion as me, who I never would have met before from all around the world.
That's awesome. Julian, you want to talk about how globalization plays into your org's structure?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think the most important thing for me in the industry is just cross-cultural exchange. In terms of globalization, like I said, esports is just so unanimously without borders, right? Any given day for me, for my daily life, perspectively for me, I would say most of my cultural education is because of this industry, because of what I've been exposed to, the events that I've gone to, the players that I've worked with. And any given day, I'm on a WeChat call with a colleague in Beijing, or I'm on a Skype call with someone from Korea or from Australia, because we work with partners globally. I work with multiple, whether it's the Shock and NRG or smaller projects in China. I'm constantly working in the global environment. My office really is the world. And there's a ton of value in the education, the cultural education that esports really gives someone. It really gives you perspective that you don't really get in traditional education on the world. Textbooks can tell you one thing when you're growing up, but when you're going to places like Shanghai, like Seoul, like Brazil, even something as small as like going up to Canada, you're getting a cultural exchange that is invaluable. And more so on education, what's really important to me is non-related to sort of my day-to-day, but some of the larger projects that I'm involved with. Right now we're seeing a boon in esports education and actual like programs at colleges. In China, you're seeing actual degree programs that are being created based around esports, like esports training programs. Some of the projects that I've been involved with are, creating scholarship, international scholarship programs that are based solely in esports. Bringing people from Korea or lower income brackets in China and having them study at schools like UCI or somewhere in Atlanta or anywhere really on an esports scholarship. And that goes into affording not only cultural education, but education, international educational opportunities for students in China, students in Korea, students in Latin America or in the United States and vice versa, that you don't really get anywhere else. You don't really hear about someone from Beijing coming to the United States to play soccer. But maybe next year, UCI's team is primarily comprised of international scholarship students because of a program that was set up. That, for me, is something that I'm extremely passionate about, because it's like a whole sphere of education and sort of globalizing our industry from the top to bottom, whether it's professional esports, collegiate esports, or high school esports.
We have a couple minutes left. I'd love to hear a little bit about what inspires you as individuals. I think that really is an indicator of what you're most passionate about, what continues to have you show up every day and do the work and grind. I think each of us has come a long way over the last several years, and sometimes more than a decade, to be in the positions that we are now. And I think for myself, it's seeing that gaming and my love of games connecting me with other people from all around the world and getting like that cultural education event where I can learn from all of them. I can learn from each of you and from all of these different experiences. And I think that's the thing that inspires me the most, is continuing to be able to learn and evolve and adapt. How about you, Eric?
Well, I think first and foremost, the thing as leaders in the esports industry we need to think about is that this thing is much bigger, than us, and we're really in a position at the cutting edge to lay the groundwork for what's going to make or break this industry going forward. A few years ago, I was at an event and a little boy came up to me, maybe about 8 years old or so, with his parents. And he was all excited to meet me, and his parents said, oh, he wants to be an esports caster when he grows up like you do. And I had never experienced that kind of thing before. Like, I was just barely getting into it at that point. I could barely pay the bills doing it, but here was this kid saying that he wanted to do that. And that was a big moment for me, because that kind of, I think, defined what's in the forefront of my mind when I make decisions and talk about esports. Is I want to do everything to make sure that that kid can do that. Whether it's helping create these high school and college programs, making esports something that's appealing to parents and a healthy activity. And I think that's something that anyone in the industry needs to really keep in mind, is that we aren't necessarily, this generation, we're not going to be the ones to really reap the fruits of the industry, right? We're going to be the ones to sort of begin the labors, right, that are going to benefit future generations. And this industry, will be huge, and it's a big responsibility that I think we all need to remember is everything we do right now could have a profound impact on the industry and that kid, right, or the kids that you met at that camp going forward. And I think that that's the thing that kind of motivates me, and what I would hope motivates, well, I know motivates the rest of us too. So
That is actually very philosophical, Eric. Appreciate
I'm
it.
sorry. I
Emmalee,
was not major. Sorry.
tell us a little bit about what inspires you.
Well, for me, obviously, I need to win tournaments over and over and dominate my scene. Um, but other than that, I think there's so much more than just winning events for being a professional gamer. We're role models to people, to kids who are growing up and learning about the esports world. And for me, what inspires me is to just really set a pathway, an easy pathway for these kids to walk for a better future tomorrow for them. So, that's why panels like this is a great start, and going to colleges and high schools and talking with them and letting them know anything you want to be in life, the only thing that's going to get in the way is you. So keep working hard, and that's what inspires me, is to inspire others.
That's cool. Julian?
Yeah, for me, it's in twofold. It's first and foremost what I was just speaking on, sort of being able to, in some capacity, create opportunity for those that wouldn't have it beforehand, or to make opportunity just easier in general for a diverse pool of people internationally. I think my day-to-day is absolutely about when I work day-to-day, I'm not only thinking about what can I do for Shock, what can I do for NRG. It's really about what can I do for the industry and how do we affect the industry on large-scale projects. And then twofold, it's really about the stories that I can tell for the players within the industry and how those stories can elicit emotion and sort of dreaming for the people that are watching them. Because you're giving the stories in esports of some of these athletes and some of these players are so unique and so remarkable that I would wager that some of these stories are more remarkable than the ones you get in traditional sports. And it's such a larger audience. If you just look at viewership numbers now in esports, for your content and for the stories being told, that you can elicit these reactions in kids and in people that are having a struggling time or really don't know what to do or want to give up on their aspirations, whether it's in gaming or esports. But if you can give just one person a platform to tell just one kid that, this player went from nothing to supporting his entire family because he's an esports athlete and he worked hard for 10 years. That, to me, I can go to bed nice like every night. So,
well, I hope this conversation has been interesting insofar as like, what does it mean to talk about esports lifestyle? What does that mean to us? As Erik said, as thought leaders within the space, I think it's a real demonstration of how do we translate our passion on a daily basis in our work and in how we interact with each other. And I think the mindfulness that I'm hearing echoed in my colleagues is, we really care a lot about the legacy that we leave behind, and we really care a lot about the industry and about the aspirational people who are observing like what we're doing every day. So thank you all for hanging out. Talk to these people. They're all awesome. And I hope you have a really wonderful day, but that's all the time that we have.